The certified letter from the Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association arrived on a Tuesday morning in February. And I knew immediately it was trouble because nothing good ever came in those official envelopes with the raised gold seal. I stood in my driveway in Fairfax, Virginia, still wearing my work boots and thermals after finishing a pre-dawn snow removal run, steam rising from my coffee mug into the frigid air as I tore open the envelope. Inside was a formal notice of violation and a fine for $1,200. $1,200 for parking my commercial plow truck in my driveway. I read it 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rising with each pass. The letter was signed by someone named Brenda Patterson, the HOA president, and it cited Section 14.7 of the community bylaws about commercial vehicles being prohibited from residential driveways between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. My name is Blake Quincy, and I have lived in this neighborhood for 8 years. I bought my house here when I was 32, right after starting my independent contracting business. The neighborhood was decent back then, with reasonable people serving on the HOA board who understood that folks had to make a living. But about 2 years ago, everything changed when Brenda and her crew got elected on a platform of maintaining property values and neighborhood aesthetics. I looked at my Ford F-350 with the Western Plow attachment sitting in my driveway. It was not some junker. I kept it clean, maintained, and in excellent condition. It was a necessary tool for the work I did during winter months, and I had no other place to store it. My garage was full of other equipment, and renting storage space would cost me hundreds a month. The violation notice stated that I had been observed parking the vehicle in violation of the bylaws on multiple occasions throughout January and early February. It demanded that I cease this behavior immediately and pay the fine within 30 days or face additional penalties, including daily fines and potential legal action. I crumpled the letter in my fist and then smoothed it back out. Getting angry would not solve anything. What really burned me was the timing. We were in the middle of one of the worst winters Northern Virginia had seen in years. I had been working 16-hour days keeping driveways clear, parking lots accessible, and most importantly, ensuring emergency access routes remained passable. See, what Brenda Patterson and her HOA board did not know was that I held the contract with the town of Fairfax to maintain emergency vehicle access to 3 fire stations in our area, including Station 7, which sat just 2 blocks outside our neighborhood. Every time it snowed more than 2 inches, I was out there at 3 a.m. making sure those access roads were clear. I had saved the town thousands of dollars by underbidding the big commercial snow removal companies, and I took pride in the fact that not once in 3 years had an emergency vehicle been delayed because of snow on my watch. But apparently, that did not matter to Brenda Patterson. All she saw was a commercial vehicle that did not fit her vision of suburban perfection. I pulled out my phone and called my buddy Rick Martinez, who lived 3 streets over in the same neighborhood. Rick was a lawyer who specialized in property law, and we had been friends since college. "Blake, what is up?" Rick answered on the second ring. "I just got hit with a $1,200 fine from the HOA for parking my truck in my driveway. Are you serious? They are actually enforcing that ridiculous bylaw, apparently so, signed by Queen Brenda herself." Rick sighed. "I warned everyone when that bylaw got passed 2 years ago that it was going to cause problems. Look, you have options. You can appeal to the board, you can fight it in court, or you can just pay it and figure out somewhere else to park. I am not paying $1,200 for parking my work vehicle at my own house," I said. "And I sure as hell am not renting storage space when I have a perfectly good driveway." Then you need to show up at the next board meeting and make your case. The meeting is next Thursday evening at the community center. Bring documentation of your work, especially that fire station contract. Show them you are providing a valuable community service. You really think that will matter to Brenda? Probably not, but it will matter to some of the other board members. Brenda might be president, but she only has one vote. If you can swing two others to your side, you can get the fine overturned. After hanging up with Rick, I decided I needed to learn more about this Brenda Patterson and exactly what I was dealing with. I had seen her around the neighborhood, always speed walking with her phone in hand, usually wearing expensive athletic wear despite never actually exercising. She drove a white Mercedes SUV and lived in one of the larger homes on Oakmont Drive, the street with the highest property values in Meadowbrook Hills. Over the next few days, I did some digging. I talked to neighbors and learned that I was not the first person Brenda had targeted. Old Mr. Chen, 3 blocks over, got fined $500 for leaving his garbage cans visible from the street past noon on collection day. The Hendersons got hit with a violation for their mailbox being the wrong shade of black. The Kowalskis were cited because their lawn had patches of snow that melted unevenly, supposedly creating an eyesore. The more I learned, the angrier I got. This was not about maintaining property values. This was about control and power. Brenda had turned the HOA into her personal fiefdom, and she was using the bylaws as weapons against anyone who did not conform to her exact vision of how the neighborhood should look and operate. Thursday evening came, and I put on a clean button-down shirt and brought a folder full of documentation. I had my contract with the town, response time logs from the fire department, letters of commendation from the fire chief, and even some news articles about the importance of keeping emergency routes clear during winter storms. The community center meeting room was about half full when I arrived. I recognized most of the faces, though I did not know everyone by name. Rick was already there, sitting near the back. He nodded at me as I took a seat in the third row. Brenda Patterson sat at a table in the front with 4 other board members. She was exactly as I remembered, around 50 years old with perfectly styled blonde hair that probably cost more to maintain than my monthly truck payment. She wore a pearl necklace and a navy blazer that screamed trying too hard. "Let us call this meeting to order," Brenda said, tapping a gavel against the table. "We have several items on the agenda tonight, including updates on the spring landscaping project, the pool reopening timeline, and several violation appeals." She droned on about the landscaping project for 20 minutes. Apparently, she wanted to replace all the neighborhood entrance signs with something more upscale looking, which would cost each homeowner an additional special assessment of $300. Several people in the audience grumbled, but no one spoke up. Finally, we got to the violation appeals section. There were 2 before mine. First was a young couple who had been fined for hanging Christmas lights after January 15th. They apologized profusely and promised to take them down immediately. Brenda graciously agreed to reduce their fine from $200 to $100, acting like she was doing them some huge favor. The second appeal was from an elderly woman named Dorothy who had been cited for having weeds in her flower bed. Dorothy explained that she had been recovering from hip surgery and simply had not been able to do the yard work herself yet. Brenda listened with a tight smile and then denied the appeal, saying that medical issues were not a valid excuse for violating community standards. Dorothy could hire a landscaper or pay the fine. I felt my jaw clench as Dorothy shuffled back to her seat, looking defeated. Next we have Blake Quincy appealing a $1,200 fine for illegal parking of a commercial vehicle, Brenda announced, looking at me with an expression that I can only describe as smugly anticipatory. I stood and walked to the front, carrying my folder. "Thank you for hearing my appeal. I received a fine for parking my plow truck in my driveway overnight. I understand there is a bylaw about commercial vehicles, but I believe there are circumstances that warrant an exception in this case." "The bylaws do not provide for exceptions," Brenda interrupted. "They are quite clear. Commercial vehicles are not permitted in driveways between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. If I could just explain what I do with that truck. It does not matter what you do with it. The bylaw is the bylaw. We cannot make exceptions for some people and not others. That would not be fair." I took a breath, trying to keep my cool. The truck is used to maintain emergency access routes for the fire department. I have a contract with the town to keep the roads to Station 7 clear during snow events. Without my truck being readily available at my home, I cannot respond quickly enough to meet the contract requirements. One of the other board members, a middle-aged man named Thomas Reed, leaned forward. "That actually sounds important. How quickly do you need to respond?" "During a snow event, I need to be on site within 30 minutes of accumulation reaching 2 inches. If I had to drive somewhere else to pick up my truck first, I could not meet that deadline." "There are storage facilities within a few miles," Brenda said dismissively. "You could keep it there and still respond in time." "The nearest 24-hour accessible storage facility is actually 8 miles away," I countered. "And that would add at least 20 minutes to my response time, not including the time to get there, open the gate, and get the truck out." "We are talking about emergency vehicle access. Every minute matters." A woman on the board named Jennifer Carlson spoke up. "Do you have documentation of this contract?" "I do." I opened my folder and pulled out copies for each board member. "This is my contract with the town." I also have letters from Fire Chief David Murphy commending my work and response times, as well as documentation of every call out I have responded to over the past 3 winters. I handed out the papers, and I could see several board members actually reading through them with interest. Brenda glanced at hers and set it aside. "This is all very nice," she said, "but it does not change the fact that you are in violation of a clearly stated bylaw that you agreed to follow when you purchased your home in this community." "I did agree to follow reasonable bylaws," I said. "But I think when a bylaw prevents someone from doing work that protects the community and saves lives, that bylaw needs to be reconsidered." "So you think you should be above the rules?" Brenda shot back. "You think you are special? I think common sense should prevail. My truck is not an eyesore. It is clean and well maintained. It is not leaking oil or taking up multiple parking spaces. The only thing commercial about it is the plow attachment, which I need for my work. Work that, by the way, benefits everyone in this neighborhood by ensuring emergency vehicles can respond quickly if needed." Thomas Reed looked at Brenda. "I have to say, I think Blake makes a good point. This is not like someone running an auto repair shop out of their garage. This is a single vehicle used for legitimate snow removal work that serves a public safety function. The bylaw does not distinguish between types of commercial vehicles," Brenda insisted. "If we allow his truck, then we have to allow contractor vans, landscaping trailers, plumbing trucks, and everything else. Where do we draw the line?" "We draw the line at common sense," said Jennifer Carlson. "I have driven past Blake's house many times. His truck is not offensive. It is not like he has a rusty dump truck sitting there. And if he is keeping fire station access clear, that is something we should be supporting, not punishing." A fourth board member, Sharon Mitchell, finally spoke. She was older than the others, probably in her late 60s. "I remember when my late husband served on this board. We never would have enforced something like this so rigidly. The point of an HOA is to protect property values and maintain community standards, not to make life difficult for people who are just trying to do their jobs. Brenda's face was getting red. I appreciate everyone's input, but we need to maintain consistency. If we start making exceptions, the bylaws become meaningless. Then maybe we need to amend the bylaw, Thomas said. I move that we table Blake's fine pending a review of the commercial vehicle restrictions in our bylaws. I second that motion, Jennifer said immediately. Brenda looked furious, but she had to follow proper procedure. All in favor? Thomas, Jennifer, and Sharon all raised their hands. That was 3 votes out of 5. The motion passes, Thomas said before Brenda could spin it somehow. Blake, your fine is suspended while we review the bylaw. We will take this up again at next month's meeting. I nodded, gathering my papers. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to consider the circumstances. As I walked back to my seat, I could feel Brenda's eyes boring into my back. This was not over. I had won a temporary reprieve, but I had also made an enemy of someone who clearly did not like losing. After the meeting, Rick caught up with me in the parking lot. That went better than I expected. You got the fine suspended. For now, I said. But did you see the look on Brenda's face? She is going to fight this. Let her fight. You have 3 board members who see reason. Even if she refuses to budge, you have the votes to overturn any decision she makes. I wanted to share Rick's optimism, but something told me this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to my phone ringing at 5 a.m. It was Chief Murphy from Station 7. Blake, we have got a problem. Someone filed a formal complaint with the town about your contract, claiming you are not qualified to handle emergency access routes. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. What? Who filed a complaint? It came through the town manager's office. I do not have a name yet, but they are claiming you do not have proper insurance or certification. I know that is nonsense because I have reviewed your credentials myself, but the town is required to investigate any formal complaint. You are going to need to provide documentation proving you meet all the requirements. I can get you everything you need by this afternoon. This is ridiculous. I agree, but my hands are tied. Until this gets resolved, I need to suspend your contract temporarily. I am sorry, Blake. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. The morning after I challenged Brenda at the board meeting, suddenly, there is a complaint about my qualifications to the town. I called Rick again. I think Brenda is retaliating. I explained what Chief Murphy had told me. Rick was quiet for a moment. That would be a serious accusation. You have proof she filed the complaint. Not yet, but who else would do this? Could be anyone who was at that meeting. Could be someone who does not like your truck. Could even be a competitor who wants your contract. You need to be careful about throwing accusations around without evidence. He was right, of course. But I knew in my gut this was Brenda. I spent the rest of the day gathering documentation for Chief Murphy. Insurance certificates, business licenses, equipment certifications, safety training records, everything the town could possibly need. I delivered it all to the fire station that afternoon. This should clear everything up, Chief Murphy said, reviewing the documents. But the investigation process could take a week or 2. In the meantime, I had to hire Cascade Commercial Snow Removal to handle the emergency routes. They are charging the town twice what you charge, and they are already complaining about the response time requirements. I am sorry you are dealing with this. Not your fault. Whoever filed this complaint wasted everyone's time and is costing taxpayers money. That does not sit well with me. Over the next week, things got worse. I received another violation notice from the HOA. this time for leaving my garbage cans visible from the street for more than 4 hours after collection. The fine was $200. The next day, I got cited for having a small oil stain on my driveway. Another $200. Then came a notice about my mailbox needing repainting. $150. Brenda was bombarding me with petty violations, clearly trying to drive me out of the neighborhood or at least make my life miserable. I was not the only one. Dorothy, the elderly woman with the weeds in her flower bed, received 3 more violation notices in the same week. The young couple with the Christmas lights got cited for their garage door being left open during the day. It was like Brenda had decided to crack down on everyone who had shown any sympathy toward me at the meeting. Rick advised me to document everything and pay none of the fines while we prepared to challenge them all at once. She is building a paper trail to try to force you out. Do not give her the satisfaction. We will fight every single one of these at the next meeting. That weekend, we got hit with another major snowstorm. 8 inches fell between Friday night and Saturday morning. My phone started ringing at 3 a.m. with calls from various clients needing their properties cleared. I threw on my gear and headed out to my truck, except my truck was not there. I stood in my empty driveway, snow falling around me, staring at the spot where my F-350 should have been. At first I thought maybe I was still half asleep and confused, but no, the truck was definitely gone. It had been towed. I called the police non-emergency line and reported it. The dispatcher checked and confirmed that yes, my vehicle had been towed at the request of the Meadowbrook Hills HOA for being in violation of parking regulations. The truck is currently at Morton's Towing on Route 50, the dispatcher told me. You will need to contact them directly about retrieval. It was 3:30 in the morning. Morton's Towing did not open until 7 a.m. I had clients expecting me, including the fire station access routes that I was technically still responsible for until the town's investigation concluded. I called Chief Murphy and explained the situation. He was not happy. This is getting out of hand. Who authorized towing your truck? The HOA, apparently. The president has been making my life hell since I challenged a fine at the board meeting. I am going to make some calls. This might actually help your case with the town. If the HOA is interfering with your ability to perform emergency services, that is a problem. By 7 a.m., I was at Morton's Towing with $550 cash for the retrieval fee and storage. The guy at the desk was unapologetic. We got a call from the HOA that the vehicle was illegally parked. We have a contract with them to handle violations. You want your truck, you pay the fee. I paid, got my truck, and spent the rest of the day playing catch-up on snow removal. I was 4 hours behind schedule, and several clients were upset. The fire station routes were passable, but not to the standard I usually maintained. It was embarrassing and frustrating. That evening, I sat down at my kitchen table and wrote out a detailed timeline of everything that had happened since I received the first violation notice. The fine for my truck, the complaint to the town, the multiple petty violations, the towing incident. It was clear harassment, but I needed to figure out my next move. Rick came over and reviewed my timeline. This is good. This shows a pattern of retaliation. But here is the thing. HOA disputes are civil matters. Unless she does something criminal, the police are not going to get involved. Your best bet is still to fight this through proper HOA channels and, if necessary, take legal action for harassment. What if I can prove she filed that complaint with the town under false pretenses? Then you might have grounds for a defamation or tortious interference lawsuit. But first you need proof. The next day, I went to Town Hall and filed a Freedom of Information Act request for any complaints filed about my snow removal contract. It would take a few days to process, but public records had to be disclosed. While I waited, I focused on gathering support from other homeowners. I went door to door talking to neighbors, explaining what was happening and asking them to attend the next HOA meeting to speak on my behalf. Most people were sympathetic. Several shared their own stories of unreasonable fines and overzealous enforcement. By the time the next board meeting rolled around 2 weeks later, I had 15 homeowners committed to showing up and voicing their concerns. I also had my FOIA request results, which confirmed that the complaint about my qualifications had been filed by Brenda Patterson herself. She had signed her name to a document claiming I lacked proper licensing and insurance, which was demonstrably false. The meeting room was packed. Brenda looked surprised and annoyed by the turnout. She tried to rush through the early agenda items, but Thomas Reed stopped her. Before we get into routine business, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. We have a lot of concerned homeowners here tonight, and I think we owe it to them to hear what they have to say. Brenda's jaw tightened. There is a proper procedure for homeowner comments. They can speak during the designated comment period at the end of the meeting. I move that we move the comment period to right now, Jennifer Carlson said. I second, Sharon Mitchell added. The motion passed 3-2 with Brenda and the fifth board member, a quiet man named Paul Davies who always voted with Brenda, opposing one by one. Homeowners stood and spoke. They talked about unreasonable fines, inconsistent enforcement, and a general feeling that the HOA had become more about control than community. Dorothy stood and talked about being fined while recovering from surgery. The young couple with the Christmas lights explained how they had been cited multiple times for minor issues after speaking at the previous meeting. Then I stood. I want to address the ongoing situation with my work truck. Since the last meeting, I have received 5 additional violation notices totaling over $1,000 in fines. Last weekend, my truck was towed in the middle of a snow emergency, preventing me from fulfilling my responsibilities to maintain emergency vehicle access routes. This towing directly interfered with public safety. I held up the FOIA documents. I also have proof that someone filed a false complaint with the town claiming I was not properly licensed or insured to do my work. This complaint resulted in my contract being temporarily suspended, costing the town money and putting emergency response at risk. The person who filed that complaint was HOA President Brenda Patterson. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Brenda stood up, her face red. That is a lie. I did no such thing. I have the documents right here. I walked to the board table and placed the papers in front of Thomas Reed. The complaint is signed by Brenda Patterson and includes her address and contact information. The town investigated and found that all my credentials and insurance were in perfect order, exactly as they had been when I was awarded the contract 3 years ago. This was a false complaint filed with the intent to interfere with my business. Thomas reviewed the documents, his expression darkening. Brenda, did you file this complaint? I was concerned about public safety. That is not what I asked. Did you file this complaint? Brenda sat down heavily. I filed a legitimate concern with the town. As HOA president, I have a responsibility to ensure that contractors working in and around our community are properly qualified. Blake does not work in the community, Jennifer pointed out. He maintains fire station access roads outside the neighborhood. This has nothing to do with HOA business. His truck is parked in the community in violation of our bylaws, Brenda shot back. That makes it HOA business. Rick stood up from the back of the room. I am a property law attorney and I have reviewed the situation carefully. What we have here is a clear pattern of harassment and retaliation against a homeowner who exercised his right to appeal an HOA decision. The towing incident alone could constitute illegal interference with his ability to earn a livelihood. The false complaint to the town could be grounds for defamation or tortious interference. Miss Patterson, your actions as HOA president have exposed this organization to significant legal liability. The room went silent. Brenda looked like she had been slapped. Paul Davies, who had been silent the entire meeting, finally spoke. I did not know anything about a complaint to the town. Brenda, did you discuss this with the rest of the board before filing it? I did not need to discuss it. I was acting in my capacity as a concerned citizen, not as HOA president. But you used your HOA title on the complaint, Thomas said, looking at the documents. You signed it as Brenda Patterson, President, Meadowbrook Hills HOA. This was getting worse for Brenda by the minute, and I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Sharon Mitchell shook her head. This is unacceptable. You have abused your position and potentially opened us up to lawsuits. I move that we immediately suspend all fines against Blake Quincy pending a full review of the commercial vehicle bylaw. I second, Jennifer said. All in favor. Thomas did not even wait for Brenda to try to take control. 4 hands went up. Only Paul Davies abstained. Brenda did not even vote, just sat there looking stunned. Motion passes, Thomas said. He looked at Brenda. I am also calling for a special board meeting this weekend to discuss your conduct as president. This has gone too far. The meeting continued, but the energy had shifted completely. Several more homeowners spoke about their concerns with HOA management. By the end, there was a clear consensus that changes needed to be made. As people filed out, several neighbors came up to thank me for standing up to Brenda. Dorothy gave me a hug and told me I was doing the right thing. Even some people I did not know well expressed their support. Rick and I walked to our cars together. That went well. The board is clearly turning against her. What happens now? I asked. They will probably ask for her resignation. If she refuses, they could vote to remove her as president, though she would still be a board member unless they take further action. Either way, her power is broken. And the lawsuit angle, up to you. You have grounds if you want to pursue it, but personally, I think you have already won. The fines are suspended, the board is on your side, and Brenda's reputation in this community is destroyed. Sometimes that is victory enough. I thought about it on the drive home. Rick was probably right. I did not want to spend months or years tied up in litigation. I just wanted to live in my house, park my truck in my driveway, and do my job without harassment. But I also did not want to let Brenda off the hook completely. What she had done was wrong, and there should be consequences. The next morning, I got a call from Chief Murphy. Good news. The town investigation is closed. Your contract is reinstated effective immediately. The town manager was not happy when he learned that the complaint came from an HOA president with a personal vendetta. He is actually looking into whether there are grounds for the town to pursue action against her for filing a false report. Really? Really? Filing a false complaint with a government agency is serious business. At minimum, it wasted town resources investigating a baseless claim. At worst, it interfered with emergency services during winter weather. The town attorney is reviewing it. That weekend, the special HOA board meeting took place. I was not there, but Rick attended and filled me in afterward. The board voted 4-1 to remove Brenda as president, with Paul Davies being the only dissenting vote. Thomas Reed was elected as the new president. The board also voted to formally apologize to me and several other homeowners for overzealous enforcement of bylaws. Additionally, they agreed to form a committee to review all HOA bylaws and recommend changes to make them more reasonable and flexible. The commercial vehicle restriction would be revised to allow work vehicles that are properly maintained and not creating legitimate nuisances. Brenda stormed out of the meeting before it ended, according to Rick. She resigned from the board entirely the next day via email, citing a hostile work environment. A week later, I received a letter from the town. They had decided not to pursue criminal charges against Brenda for the false complaint, but they had issued an official letter of reprimand that would be kept on file. The letter stated that any future complaints from her would be treated with extra scrutiny. It was not much, but it was something. Things settled down after that. I kept parking my truck in my driveway. Nobody complained. I continued my snow removal work without interference. Chief Murphy was happy to have me back, especially after the expensive disaster that was Cascade commercial snow removal. One evening in late March, after the last snow of the season had melted, I was working in my garage when Dorothy walked over with a plate of cookies. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "After you stood up to Brenda, I felt brave enough to speak up too. And now the new board has waived all my outstanding fines. They said they are taking a more compassionate approach to enforcement." "That is great, Dorothy. I am glad it worked out. We all are. You know, there is talk of you running for the board yourself in the next election." "You would have my vote," I laughed. "I appreciate that, but I think I will stick to plowing snow and leave the HOA politics to someone else." After she left, I thought about everything that had happened. It had been exhausting and frustrating, but in the end, things had worked out. Brenda was gone. The bylaws were being revised. The community was functioning better. I had learned that sometimes you have to stand up to unreasonable people, even when they have official titles and formal authority. Sometimes you have to trust that other people will see reason if you present the facts clearly and calmly. And sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing actually leads to the right outcome. A month later, I was finishing up some spring yard work when a white Mercedes SUV drove slowly past my house. I looked up and saw Brenda in the driver's seat, staring at my truck in the driveway. Our eyes met for a moment. She looked away and drove on. I never saw her around the neighborhood again after that. Rick told me she had put her house on the market and was moving to a different neighborhood in a different town. Apparently, after her removal as HOA president and the humiliation at the board meetings, she could not stand living in Meadowbrook Hills anymore. Part of me felt a little bad for her. She had probably thought she was doing the right thing, maintaining standards and protecting property values. But somewhere along the way, she had let power go to her head and lost sight of the fact that an HOA is supposed to serve the community, not rule over it. The following winter was blissfully uneasy. I had a new contract with the town, this time with a small pay increase after Chief Murphy went to bat for me with the town manager. My truck sat in my driveway every night without issue. Thomas Reed and the new HOA board operated with common sense and reasonableness. They enforced the rules that mattered while showing flexibility on things that did not. Rick did end up running for the board and won a seat in the spring election. With him on the board, I knew there would be at least one person who understood property rights and legal realities, rather than just neighborhood aesthetics. One evening in December, almost a year after the whole mess started, I was coming home from clearing the fire station access roads after a moderate snowfall when I saw fire trucks heading toward our neighborhood. I followed them and found them parked outside a house on Oakmont Drive, Brenda's old street. A family's kitchen had caught fire while they were cooking dinner. Thanks to the clear roads, the fire trucks had arrived in less than 4 minutes. The fire was contained quickly, and no one was hurt. The fire captain told the family that the quick response time had probably saved their house from total destruction. As I stood watching the firefighters work, Chief Murphy walked over. "Nice roads tonight, Blake. We made excellent time. Just doing my job. That job matters. I hope you know that. If we had been delayed even a few minutes, this whole house could have gone up. That family could have lost everything, or worse." I nodded, watching the smoke clear from the kitchen windows. This was exactly why I had fought Brenda and the HOA. This was why parking my truck in my driveway was not just about convenience. It was about being ready to respond when it mattered most. The next day, I ran into the family whose house had caught fire. They were staying with relatives while repairs were being done. The mother, a woman named Grace Porter, stopped me on the sidewalk. "I heard you are the one who keeps the fire station roads clear," she said. "I wanted to thank you. The fire chief said the quick response saved our home. I did not realize how important that work was until last night. I am just glad everyone is okay." "We are, thanks to people like you. I also heard about what you went through with the old HOA board. I am sorry that happened. What you do is important and you should never have been punished for it." Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about the fire and how the fast response time had been crucial. Several people who had not been involved in the HOA dispute before now came up to me to express their appreciation for what I did. Even some folks who had been supporters of Brenda's strict enforcement approach seemed to have changed their minds. It was validating, but also a reminder that sometimes people do not understand the value of something until they need it. Those fire station access roads were just abstract roads somewhere outside the neighborhood, until suddenly they were the path that brought help when Grace Porter's kitchen caught fire. Rick and I grabbed beers one evening at a local bar to catch up. He had been busy with his new board responsibilities. "You know what is funny," he said. "The property values Brenda was so obsessed with protecting have actually gone up since she left. Turns out people prefer living in a neighborhood with reasonable leadership and common sense enforcement." Who would have thought? We have also gotten feedback from real estate agents that our neighborhood is now seen as more desirable specifically because we are not one of those nightmare HOAs with insane rules. People are actually choosing to buy here because they know they will not get fined for ridiculous things. I raised my beer. To common sense. To common sense. As winter deepened, my routine continued. Every snowfall brought me out in the pre-dawn hours, plowing driveways for my regular clients and maintaining the fire station access roads. My truck sat in my driveway between jobs, ready to go at a moment's notice. The new commercial vehicle bylaw that the HOA had implemented made perfect sense. Work vehicles were allowed as long as they were properly maintained, did not leak fluids, and were not operated in a way that created noise disturbances during quiet hours. It was exactly the kind of reasonable rule that protected legitimate neighborhood interests, while not making life unnecessarily difficult for people trying to make a living. Several other neighbors who had been hiding work vehicles in storage or parking them elsewhere started parking at their homes again. A carpenter who lived on my street brought his van home. A plumber 2 blocks over started parking his truck in his driveway. The neighborhood did not descend into chaos. Property values did not collapse. Life just went on normally. One Saturday morning in February, I was having coffee in my kitchen when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a man in his 40s wearing a suit and carrying a clipboard. "Blake Quincy." "My name is Gerald Simmons. I am with the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. You have a few minutes. I invited him in, curious what this was about. I am here because we have been reviewing county contracts for snow removal and emergency access maintenance. Your work with the town of Fairfax has not gone unnoticed. Fire Chief Murphy speaks very highly of you, and your response times and quality of work are exceptional. Thank you. I take pride in what I do. The county is looking to expand our emergency access program to more areas. We currently use large commercial companies for most of our work, but we have found that smaller independent contractors often provide better service at lower cost. Would you be interested in bidding on some additional routes? This was unexpected. I would definitely be interested, yes. Gerald spent the next hour going over potential routes and contract requirements. By the time he left, I had information packets for 3 different bid opportunities that could potentially double my winter income. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table looking at the papers and shaking my head in wonder. A year ago, Brenda Patterson was doing everything she could to run me out of business and drive me out of the neighborhood. Now, I was potentially expanding that same business thanks in part to the reputation I had built doing exactly what she had tried to stop me from doing. I called Rick to tell him the news. This is amazing. See what happens when you stand your ground. I could not have done it without your help. That first board meeting when you advised me how to present my case, that made all the difference. You did the hard part. You stood up there and made your case clearly and calmly. You did not get defensive or angry. You just presented facts. That is why people listened. Over the next few weeks, I prepared bids for the county contracts. It was a lot of work, but exciting. I had to detail my equipment, insurance, experience, and proposed response procedures. I spent evenings researching and putting together the most professional bids I could. In early March, I got the call. I had won 2 of the 3 contracts. The county was impressed with my track record and my significantly lower bid compared to the big commercial companies. The contracts would start the following winter season and would more than double my snow removal income. I celebrated that night with Rick and his wife Sophia at their house. Sophia had heard all about the HOA drama and was thrilled to see things working out. You know what the best part is, she said. Brenda thought she was protecting the neighborhood by getting rid of you. Instead, she is gone and you are more successful than ever. Karma is real. I do not know if it is karma, I said. I think it is just that the truth eventually comes out. She was wrong, and enough people were willing to see that and do the right thing. As spring arrived and the snow season ended, I reflected on everything that had happened. It had been one of the most stressful years of my life, but also one of the most rewarding. I had learned that I was stronger than I thought, that community still mattered, and that standing up to bullies was worth it even when it felt scary and overwhelming. Dorothy continued to bring me cookies every few weeks. The young couple with the Christmas lights became good friends, and we had them over for dinner occasionally. Grace Porter and her family moved back into their repaired house and threw a neighborhood party to thank everyone who had helped them. Thomas Reed turned out to be an excellent HOA president. He ran meetings efficiently, enforced rules fairly, and always seemed to keep the focus on what was actually important, maintaining a pleasant community where people wanted to live. Board meetings became shorter and less contentious. Violations were handled with warnings and assistance before fines. The neighborhood felt more like an actual community rather than a collection of properties under surveillance. In May, I was doing some work in my front yard when a for sale sign went up across the street. My neighbor Jim was retiring and moving to Florida. That evening, a young couple came to look at the house. They saw me working on my truck and walked over to introduce themselves. "Hi, I am Marcus and this is my wife Gina. We are looking at the house across the street. Can I ask you about the neighborhood? Sure, what do you want to know? We heard something about HOA drama a while back. Is that still an issue? I smiled. There was some drama, but it got resolved. The HOA is well run now, very reasonable. As long as you keep your property maintained and are not doing anything crazy, you will be fine. Marcus looked at my truck. I am a contractor too, electrical work. I have a work van. That going to be a problem? Not at all. They revised the bylaws to be more reasonable about work vehicles. Just keep it clean and you will be fine. Actually, there are several contractors in the neighborhood now. They ended up buying the house. When they moved in a few weeks later, I helped them unload their moving truck. Marcus's work van sat in his driveway without anyone saying a word about it. That summer, the HOA organized a neighborhood barbecue at the community center. It was the first one they had done in years, and the turnout was great. Thomas Reid gave a short speech thanking everyone for making Meadowbrook Hills a great place to live. He specifically mentioned the importance of neighbors helping neighbors and looking out for each other. I was manning one of the grills when Rick came over with a plate of food. So, any regrets about how everything went down last year? He asked. I thought about it. No regrets. It was hard, and there were moments I wanted to just give up and pay the fines or move away. But I am glad I fought, not just for me, but for everyone else who was dealing with the same unreasonable treatment. You started something important. People realized they did not have to just accept whatever the HOA decided. They had a voice. We all did. That is what made the difference. It was not just me standing up. It was Dorothy and that young couple and Jennifer and Sharon on the board and you and everyone else who was willing to say this is not right. As the sun set and people gathered around eating and talking, I looked around at my neighborhood. These were good people, just trying to live their lives and enjoy their homes. They did not need someone like Brenda Patterson making everything difficult in the name of property values and aesthetic standards. They needed what we had now. Reasonable rules, fair enforcement, and leadership that understood the purpose of an HOA was to serve the community, not control it. That fall, I prepared for another winter season with my expanded county contracts. I bought a second truck and hired a part-time helper to cover some of the additional routes. My little snow removal operation was growing into a real business. The first major snow of the season came in late November. I was out at 2 a.m. clearing routes, and I felt that familiar satisfaction of doing work that mattered. By 5 a.m., all my assigned roads were clear. Fire trucks, ambulances, and police vehicles could respond to emergencies without delay. Commuters would have safe roads in a few hours. As I drove home in the early morning darkness, snow still falling lightly, I passed by the entrance to Meadowbrook Hills. The neighborhood sign that Brenda had wanted to replace with something more upscale was still there, a simple brick column with the neighborhood name in bronze letters. It looked fine. It did not need to be fancier or more expensive. I pulled into my driveway and parked my truck. My house was dark, peaceful. In a few hours, I would get up and start the day properly. But for now, I was content to sit in the warm cab of my truck, engine ticking as it cooled, and feel grateful for how things had turned out. My phone buzzed with a text from Chief Murphy. "Roads look great. Thanks as always." I smiled and typed back, "Anytime. Stay safe out there." As I walked to my front door, I looked back at my truck sitting in the driveway where it belonged, where it needed to be, ready for the next call. No violation notices would appear. No tow trucks would come in the night. No HOA president would try to interfere with me doing my job. Inside, I made a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table. The house was quiet. Outside, Snow continued to fall, accumulating on roofs and streets and yards. By morning, someone would probably need their driveway cleared. By evening, the county routes might need another pass. This was my life now. A good life, built on honest work and standing up for what was right. The fight with Brenda and the HOA was over, decisively won, and the victory had ripples beyond just me being able to park my truck at home. The neighborhood was better. The HOA was better. And I had learned that sometimes the bullies do not win, that reasonable people can prevail, and that doing work that serves your community really does matter in ways both large and small. A year and a half ago, I had opened that certified letter and felt my blood pressure spike at an unreasonable fine. Tonight, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee after clearing roads that might save someone's life someday, living in a neighborhood that had found its way back to common sense, grateful for the fight even though I never wanted it. That, I decided, was the real victory, not just winning but ending up in a better place than where you started.